Broadcasting live to tape from beautiful Monmouth County, New Jersey. We're on a clear night. You can almost see an iRacing special event go off without a hitch. It's the RutgersKev Show.
Kevin O'Keefe gets the win at Charlotte.
Kevin O'Keefe is going to take his first win and only his third start in the series. Beautiful job for Kevin O'Keefe.
Gonna troll me forever.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, Sean, take a look at his on his feet there. Very appropriate today. Oh boy.
I'm Matt Malone. I stream iRacing, but when I'm not racing, I'm listening to the RutgersKev Show with your host, RutgersKev.
How does he have 38 viewers?
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the RutgersKev Show. This week, I want to start with just saying rest in peace to Total Biscuit, John Peter Bain. It was announced right before we started recording and he passed away. His voice in the gaming community will be missed. All right, now we're back to talk about some iRacing. Randy, I'll give you some thoughts if you're a fan of Total Biscuit. I gave you the news before we recorded. Do you have any quick thoughts on that?
It just sucks.
Exactly.
Fuck cancer.
F cancer. Seriously. All right,
we can get rated R for this. Fuck cancer.
Yeah, it's just sucks. So this is actually a really, really good week for iRacing. Some really positive, good news with the new build, and we just had the Indy 500, which is my favorite special event, even over Daytona 500, because I'm not a big fan of plate racing. So, and I think, let me just give my thoughts on the Indy 500 in general. As a former winner of the Indy 500, have I mentioned that, Randy?
Time or two.
Okay, well, so to tell you the story, no, I'm just kidding. So, Indy 500 is my favorite special event because the qualifying procedures and the way it's split by the qual. So, in general, all races are split by your I rating. So, a person like me doesn't get an opportunity to race in the top split because my I rating's not high enough to race in a top split. But in Indy 500, if I put the work in, I can make top split if I just qualify fast enough. And I think that's a really cool thing. Also, what it does is it turns your races into generally a fixed setup race. So it's an open setup race that turns into a fixed setup race. So I ran the VRS setup and I just, I ran 2 qual sessions with the VRS setup, and that's all I really needed. And then I ran the race with the VRS race setup. And if you look at a chart of all the times, there's a huge spike right around my time, which is what the VRS setup was. So everybody in the race is generally running the same setup, and it just makes for a really interesting race. So people in my skill level and my split can have a great race, as well as the people at the top levels who have the qual and they get the broadcast and they get the prestige and a special event. I think it's a perfect combination, and I honestly wish that more special events went with this qual procedure. I know, like, on a one-lap pace, maybe not is the best plan for a 24-hour race, but still, it'd be pretty cool. Randy, what's your thoughts in general on how the Indy 500 is unique?
The qualifying is definitely the big one. I know, just to talk about the idea of qualifying, doing splits for the other world events, please, the other World Tour events, please, God, no, let that not happen. Daytona, maybe that could be gotten away with, but it's just it puts too much emphasis on people doing one-lap runs for a 24-hour race, and we've already had too many issues with driving standards in those splits as it already works. And
what if we went with like 2.4-hour races? What if we went back to that?
We shouldn't go back to that because we have a feature that people waited years for that's better than just doing 2.4-hour races that I think the bulk of the community actually wants.
Okay. I'm not arguing with you. What makes the Indy 500 special and unique is the qualifying, that I can have a great race with people around my skill level in terms of time, while other people can have their top prestige race. But yeah, I totally understand in a team race, you can't have one person setting a fast qual time. But hey, we spent an hour arguing the splits because one guy with a high I rating can sign up and not even race. So it's a catch-22. But let's keep it on a positive tone. That's what this podcast is. That's the theme of this podcast, is that we're positive. So another positive thing about the Indy 500 is they actually did a test beforehand. So they apparently were testing different U.S. servers, and they ran a test race, an Indy 50, the week before the 500. This is exactly what we talked about on the show. This is what they should be doing for all special events. They should be running these test servers, and guess what? It worked. The Indy 500 went off without a hitch. Really, I didn't see any issues with lagging. I didn't see anybody DC. At least I didn't see any forum threads about it. Nobody did it in the top split, as far as I know. Randy?
No, I don't think so. I mean, it was sort of, it went off pretty much smooth. You will have the occasional DC that you're going to get. That always happens, but I don't think it was anyone really important from the top split. It's not like any of the leaders randomly dropped out. And it's pretty smooth overall.
Yeah, and I don't know specifically if it's because they tested different servers, but hey, why not test different servers? This is what we talked about on the show. It's a good idea. You should run a 2.4 hour race before the 24 hour as a test. Give people the I tested certificate. It doesn't mean anything. As far as I know, it doesn't cost you anything. Just do it.
Yeah, I think that could be a good idea. I mean, I know you're a big advocate of doing 2.4 hour races. You could maybe for all these big events just do a shorter one. Maybe just mark it 2 hours and do that the week before, because it seems like for all of these events, the tech issues tend to rear their ugly heads in the first hour. So that should, in theory, be a good catch-all for that. So yeah, I think it worked.
So another thing that worked was the actual top split. So the broadcasted race this year was really good. This is the 9th annual Indy 500, and they wound up with the closest finish ever. Now it was kind of artificial because there was a one-lap shootout, but in general, that race looked like a real race. We had an early caution, which happens when people are bunched up and maybe they haven't. We had an early caution. Really, kind of poor driving caused it, and Jamie Fluke was involved. That sucks. I get a top name out, but then we had like a long stretch that was green flag, and honestly, that's what you see in the real Indy 500 too. Once they get spread out, then you get a long stretch, and there was a lot of strategy involved during that long stretch because it was like, do I pit a lap earlier or do I stretch my fuel out? That's a really like one of these 200 lap oval races should have, and because it's Indy, you actually had some really good racing in the field. Now, it may not have been for the lead, but there's different little spots in the track to pick through, and there's a story of the race. So Josh Chin was working with the other car, and they were swapping back and forth in the draft, trying to catch up. These are the story of the race that you would see in real life too. So I'm a big fan of when iRacing looks like real life, because the more real that we can make it, the better it seems. Now, Randy was in the booth for the race, so he knows. I think he can speak better on how the race looked.
I know. I mean, you're pretty much spot on. It felt a lot like a real Indy 500 race because, like you said, we had an early yellow, but then we were green for, I can't remember exactly how long. I think for several pit stops, probably better part of 110, 120 laps. It felt like, which is awesome. Which is all. What's really interesting is that we had I think 2 different Indy 500s at Race Spot the past couple weeks, and they basically they both kind of ended up the same. With a super, super long green flag run to start out, and then stacking up some cautions near the end. But no, it was a really entertaining race. Fuel strategy was pretty much a talking point the entire time. Some people would opt to go 29, 30 laps on a tank of fuel. Other people were going kind of pretty much running the thing dry, going 32, 33, and because of that, that doesn't sound like much, but you go 2 laps longer than someone one stint, suddenly you're going 4 laps longer the next one, and then 6, and then 8, and then 10. And it would just sort of compound. Just ended up with a sort of interesting dynamic later on in the race that unfortunately got somewhat erased because of some of the cautions. But you know what? That's part of oval racing and part of the way the strategy works out. But overall, it was a really good show, I thought.
And the other thing, you would ask, why would you pit a little early? Why don't you just run it dry? Another thing that the race had, what they have in real life, was that the handling of the cars started to go away over the course of the run. Now, that happens definitely in the real Indy 500. So that was cool to see. And credit to Will and the other announce teams for catching things like that. So they would notice a car have to make like a big turn of the steering wheel, and they would say, "Here, look, it's 15 laps into the run. This guy's tires are going a way." I thought that was cool to point out.
Yeah, especially, I mean, it's one of those things. The IndyCar really shows it off well because you can tell how cars do and don't work in dirty air. Things with the NASCAR, you kind of have to hope people start getting some big moments. Otherwise, it can be difficult to see the handling characteristics with those cars. Plus, you have the weight jacker and the ARB settings that you can talk about as well. So it's one of the few kind of cars on the sim that feels that you can easily sort of talk about and easily give examples of the handling characteristics as the car is going away. So it makes for a very good show, and it makes for, I think, some really good info for viewers who aren't that used to that stuff.
Another thing that happened during the race was that RaceSpot was actually broadcasting 2 races on at once. The VRS 6 hours of the Nürburgring was going on at the same time. And a cool thing that RaceSpot did, which I hadn't seen before, they actually went split screen during certain parts of the broadcast. Is that new that RaceSpot has that capability, Randy?
Yeah, we've always sort of had the capability. It's built into OBS. You just basically add something into the browser source. It's rare that we'll have other big events where, like, it'll be rare that we have such big events that we'll need to kind of use it. Obviously with a 500-mile race, and I don't know if Hugo is doing the same thing on the VRS side of things, but I know Will did it a few times, and I've actually done it in the past. I did it with the Neo 24 Hours of Le Mans, where I actually used the instead of running ads between sort of our dirt night segments. This would have been last season, so we generally would have like a 10 minutes or so downtime between like Global Rallycross and late models and sprint cars. So instead of running ads, I just brought that race up because I figure most people would rather watch some sort of racing than just commercials. It's not new. It's just sort of, it's rare that we get like a good enough sequence of events to warrant using it. So, you know, it's not uncommon that we'll have 2 events happening at the same time, but it is uncommon that we'll have 2 really big races happening at the same time. So like we wouldn't do that if it was like a 45-minute Star Mazda race or something, just because there's no point. You're not going to have a long enough advert to really warrant it.
Oh, well, now that you mentioned it, yeah, it's just the same as going side by side running your ads. But yeah, I actually didn't think about it. You just add in a browser source. That's all you need to do. But I actually thought it was a good idea. Maybe not for leagues that pay you guys, but maybe you should run maybe a highlight package of last year's race during one of these cautions, so people don't have to sit there and watch cautions. You know, they can see something more exciting. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, trying to figure out what to do in terms of adverts is always, a big talking point. No one likes getting inundated with adverts. I think we do a good job at RaceSpot though, because we typically keep it to about once an hour, which where there's nowhere else in terms of TV coverage you're going to find people, commentary teams taking breaks more or less often than that. So it's unfortunate in some ways, but it's a nifty little feature that we got when there are events happening that we can easily do that side by side element instead of using commercials. It's always good, I think, for everybody.
Yeah, and that's what people are forgetting too, is that these ads are seeing not because they are sponsors. These guys need a break. They can't be sitting there talking and using their mouths for 4 hours or whatever, how long some of these races are. They have lives and stuff, right? So they run these kind of videos as a way to rest their vocal cords, or even just use the restroom. But yeah, that's what I'm saying. So maybe instead of showing the same clip video, which you guys do, because all you guys do is just have a roll that you play on OBS. Maybe it's a good idea to make a highlight package or something. I don't know. Of course, that's extra work, and I'm not telling you guys to do extra work. I just thought it was a cool idea. That's all.
Oh yeah, I mean, like you said, we still think it was the reason we did that was we thought it was a cool idea. Like you said, it is something that we've done in the past, but when you're right, we don't technically have a roll of commercials. I mean, we just have a list basically, and like I think I'm looking at my OBS right now. There's about 20 in here that are videos. Some of them are a little bit out of date, but I think running slightly out of date commercials sort of, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. But you are right. It's one of those things where we don't get paid to run iRacing ads. It's not like iRacing pays us for every ad we run, so we don't go to ad breaks for that reason. We go to ad breaks to get everyone up out of the booth for a second, let them grab a drink, let them use the bathroom, let them maybe make something to eat really quick, just get 5 minutes and sit back down. Because a lot of times in some of the coverage, we don't really get that opportunity. We tend to not go to too many commercial breaks, for example, in the Peak Antifreeze series. But for some of the stuff, we opt to, and it's just kind of a good mental reset for everyone in the booth.
Mm-hmm. All right, so I guess we can talk about the ending now. So we had well, first off, so there was a caution. There was a restart with 50 to go. Now these guys can go about 33 to 35 laps. 35 laps, I'd have to be in a different fuel map, but that's about a fuel run. So with a caution with 50 to go, in the IndyCar, if you're near the front, then you can pit and you won't go down a lap. So if you're one of the first people that pit, you can stay on the lead lap, and then if the caution comes out, boom, now you're set, because now you're the leader. Now you'll be on older tires. But, so there was this is a broadcast that you guys should watch. We're obviously going to spoil the end here, but this was a really good, interesting race from a strategy standpoint, because when the fuel window opens, there was a big pack of cars near there towards the front. So if somebody like maybe running 8th of that 10-car train went down the pit road and was able to stay on the lead lap, maybe it would have worked out for him if it stayed green. Now, what happened was right when they're outside the window, the caution comes out. So, obviously everybody pits, but it was right when they're outside the window. Maybe like a lap and a half later, you would have had somebody duck down the pit lane, and then they would have been perfect, because they would have been on only 1 lap tires. But it just made that interesting strategy wrinkle that you also see in real life. And the credit to the announcers for catching it and talking about it and waiting for it. What were you thinking, Randy, when there was like 40 laps to go? Or are you like, oh boy, this is going to be awesome? Or were you just kind of holding your breath, waiting for something to go wrong?
Well, it's going to be interesting to see what people opted to do, and we obviously, we ended up with a kind of split strategy. We had one of the big alliances opt to try to, everyone pretty much pit there, but the gamble was, do we make it to the end, or do we come down one more time? We saw Kevin Ellis Jr. He opted to come down one more time, and he was making up some big time over the course of that run. You compare that to the... When
you say one more time, can you just explain to people what you mean?
Pitting one more time, because you have to...
Like, when did they pit?
So they pit... that restart was, if I recall correctly, was about 35 laps to go. 36 laps to go. An IndyCar can only do about 33 laps, not saving fuel. And even saving fuel, you don't save a lot of additional laps. A lot of times it's only an extra lap, maybe an extra 2, unless you're going full Alexander Rossi mode. But even then, like Alex was in like safety car maps, and he was doing everything he could to save fuel to win his 500. I think he only went 4 laps further than what would be the kind of typical kind of extended run. So you can't do a lot of the things that you can on a road course. You can maybe save a lap, maybe 2 over the course of a stint. So we got to restart with about 36, I think, and the Absolute Zero guys, the Banshee, Absolute Zero, Chimera, Power Slide, that entire team, kind of alliance, they opted to stay out and risk it. And Kevin Ellis Jr., he opted to come down pit road a bit earlier, and there was some funny shenanigans over that last stint. Those guys that decided to stay out, they were shifting into weird fuel maps they'd never been in the entire race. They were running 3 seconds a lap slower than they had been the entire time, just trying to extend that fuel to make it to the end. And the thing that was interesting is that Martin Miller, he actually came down at the second offering down pit road. And for those who don't know what I'm talking about, on the ovals, when there's a caution, you can sort of come down pit road twice. There's the usual time you come down pit road. You actually can come down a time later, and I think sometimes in the NASCAR cars, you can do it a time after that because of the 2x2 restarts. Well, he decided to come down that extra time, and a lot of other people didn't, and Martin kind of fuel trend back up. a little bit earlier than those other guys did because he had that extra little bit of fuel towards the end of the race. And that was, I thought, a really cool and nifty point just watching happen over the course of the event. In the closing stages, seeing Martin and that fuel strategy really kind of dictate what people were doing at the front of the field.
Yeah, and in the last couple of laps, he started to pull away. Now, I didn't listen to the post-race. Did you get the chance to talk to him?
No, he ended up not turning up, but it was pretty obvious, I think. One of two things happened. He either like just accepted his fate that he couldn't make it, or he was good and he trimmed up and he started pulling away. Is really the only two options I can think of, and why you'd ever start running away like that, because so yeah, I mean, he either missed his mark or he hit his mark is really the only two reasons that explains that.
Yeah, and that's really what I want to know. I mean, so what happened was the caution comes out with 4.5 to go. So imagine him, he knows he can't make it, and if the caution comes out with 4 to go, then he wins. But the caution came out with 4.5 to go. Now he's going to make it, but he's going to be a sitting duck on a restart. And if the caution came out 20 seconds later, then he wins. Just a crazy turn of events. Now, obviously, if he was going to make it, and he's even more pissed that the caution came out. But anyway, boy, you know, I will say it again. This year's Indy 500 was more like any other 500 I've seen in terms of it looking real. Now, the crash physics didn't look very real, but hey, I'll take it.
Yeah, I'll take the humorous crash physics. I will take less than realistic looking wrecks for realistic on track action 100% of the time. Right,
I totally agree. So we mentioned the caution comes out with 4.5 to go. So it turns out to be a one-lap shootout. Now, the Indy cars especially are very draft sensitive, just like in real life. You see it in the real Indy 500. These guys can really draft and really pass with really no problems. So the leader is a total sitting duck. So Joshua Chin starting second, and he passes the leader in the beginning part of the backstretch. And I was thinking to myself, boy, Joshua Chin's now a sitting duck. And so everybody starts to draft, and they pretty much go 4 wide into 3. Now this is on the last lap of the race, so they're 4 wide into 3 for the lead of the race on the last lap.
All teammates.
Yeah, they're all on a Lions,
super team,
right? They're not like they didn't have the same team name, but they were basically all running.
Yeah, they've been working together for a while.
Right. So just amazing stuff. So obviously they don't make it, right? So a couple cars in the back start banging, including the guy that was the leader of the race and would have won, and the caution came out 20 seconds later. So it comes down to 2. Actually forget the guy who finished in second. Randy, help me out.
Andrew Kinsella.
Right. So Andrew and Joshua Chin go into 3 and 4 as basically the last 2 standing because the other 2 bumped out. So Chin runs the bottom, and Josh, Chin. What's the other guy's name? Sorry,
Andrew Kinsella.
Andrew. So like I said, so they enter 3 4 wide. So Josh is on the bottom, Andrew's outside of him. Now they're still 2 wide. So they bang wheels in the middle of 4. Andrew goes and scrapes the wall on the outside, and they still come. It's the closest finish ever. So they're within a half a car at the end. Just amazing stuff. And of course, Will goes absolutely crazy.
Yeah, as he should have been. But yeah, it was a fantastic last couple corners to the end there. Indy 2.5 miles was was really awesome. Yeah, for everything that iRacing has done wrong since we started this podcast, that's one of the greatest sim races I've seen in terms of it being realistic, and in terms of the drama and the finish. And it helps when, you know, a really good friend of yours wins and a acquaintance of mine wins. So I really had a rooting interest. Yeah, it was really fun watching Josh win because he's gotten close a couple times and kind of gotten caught up in incidents that were really none of his fault. There was one time where he was actually in the position of Andrew Kinsella, where he just got passed right at the very last moment, and that was basically heartbreak for Kinsella, and it was heartbreak for Josh. Then it is anytime that happens, much like last year, it's heartbreak for Tim Holgate when Demerit just barely eked them out. That's the sort of racing you get. It's feels super good for Josh, and it's super good for the team as well. We've won a couple of these big races now this year. Josh closing out the Indy 500, and the team with partially on Josh's help, winning the SCO 1,000 or 1,000 kilometers of Suzuka, or excuse me, 10 hours of Suzuka, maybe 1,000 miles actually, but whichever, 10 hours of Suzuka that happened a little bit earlier in the year. It's a pretty nice uptick for us at Chimera.
And credit to iRacing too. When the EW18 came out on week 13,
IR18.
Oh, I'm sorry. The IR18.
Just it's just the DW12 was more named in honor of Dan Weldon. That's why I got the DW name.
Oh, I see. I didn't know that. Okay, so when the IR18 came out, the week 13 was at Indy, and you could go 2x2 through the corners full throttle, which is totally not realistic. And credit to iRacing, they made changes to specifically just the Indy package and made the racing a lot more realistic. We did have a little more grip on the outside than you have in real life, but hey, I'll take it. We don't want single file racing either.
The thing to keep in mind is that we haven't seen this new car really race in real life. We've seen it in test sessions, but at Indy in the Indy 500, they sandbag pretty much all year. They do it with all the it's Honda and Chevy. It's a bit of a battle to see what happens. Now, are we going to see sort of the pack racing that we saw on the beginning of those stints? I don't know if we'll see that exactly, but it'll be interesting to see how this Dallara IndyCar actually runs on this 2.5 mile super speedway this coming weekend, because in all honesty, the car drives and has raced very similarly on all of the tracks that we have, the way they do in real life compared to the sim. So Indy Elite Series did a race at Phoenix, and it raced pretty similarly. We've had a couple of road courses and street style courses that we've done. Of course, not real street circuits, because we don't have one of those yet. More on that in a little bit, but it's good to see that the cars race like that, and it could be a very good indicator of what we're going to see on Sunday.
So knowing that Josh Chin was going to be in the top split at Indy 500, knowing we were going to talk about the Indy 500, I scheduled to run the interview that we recorded with him the night that Randy, Empty Box, and I had our conversation, and Josh joined in. And then it turns out that he wins the race. So you've heard the Colbert bump. Well, I credit this to the RutgersKev bump. That's clearly, I take all the credit for it. So I'm going to play that interview now. Just keep in mind that this was recorded in early March, and we're not going to talk about the Indy 500 at all. And it's going to be a little bit of inside baseball between Josh, Randy, and Matt, because they were all on the same team. So, and also, I pretty much was dead tired at that point. So it's still interesting. It's interesting content. I encourage you to listen to it and check out Josh's channel. He's at the King of Chins. And congratulations to him for winning the Indy 500.
Congrats, Josh.
It's time for the RutgersKev interview, where RutgersKev does an interview. All right, we're here with Joshua Chen, and joining me is Randy and special guest Empty Box. Josh, say hi.
Hello.
Hey, Josh. So you also have a YouTube account. Can you give us the plug, please?
I do. It's going to be King of Chins. So you just type that after youtube.com/King of Chins. Bring you right to the channel. It's been a little bit since I've done a video, though. And
that was a pretty professional spiel right there. It's like you've done this before.
Almost. It's almost like I've done race interviews. Almost.
So what do you normally race? What do you upload?
A little bit of everything. I like the IndyCar. I've been doing a lot of GTE, GT3, so basically dodging wrecks and atomic bombs going off in races. But yeah, it's been kind of a nice little variety lately. About to start running IndyCar again. IndyCar Elite Series starting up soon.
Do you locally record or do you stream?
Normally I'll locally record. Sometimes I'll do streams. Some of our 24-hour races that we do, I'll tend to do streams of those, but those are kind of one-offs. I think the last one I really did was when we had EO 24 hours of Le Mans last year.
Mm-hmm. And I got your Road America race up. I noticed you don't have a webcam. Is that normal?
Yeah, I've experimented with it on and off. I think I might try and bring that back in the future. I've done it for 1 or 2 videos, but it's just trying to get lighting set up is kind of a hassle for it right now. The apartment I'm in, it's not really conducive to having a lot of light in it. I don't have any lights to set up right now, so half my face would just be dark.
Your process bar is going orange a lot too in this video. You ever have any problems with the stream?
No, not really. It's generally worked pretty well.
I mean, you're obviously doing very good. You got 190 frames per second. I assume you run triples.
No, one monitor.
Oh, okay.
Because I'm a madman, and also I'm poor.
Well, for those of you that don't know Joshua, he's very talented. I used to be a teammate with him, but we didn't really run in the same car.
Or ever together, really.
Right.
Because he was 10 seconds up the
To
road.
be fair, the best New World Sim Sport results while Kevin was with the team was when Kevin was in the car.
Right.
That is true.
That's not even that's just a fact.
I had the lead of the 24 hours of Spa.
Yeah, we almost won that race if
Yeah.
it wasn't for Mike getting screwed by a prototype.
Yeah.
But he flashed his headlights.
We have a bad history of mics in 24-hour
Yeah, we
races, don't we?
do. I almost won a 24-hour race with a random Finn, a lawyer, and a late model driver. That was a pretty star-studded rough field in that race spot 24.
It was.
Had Renz and Thomas. God, what was Thomas's name? He's a V8 guy.
I know who you're talking about. I can't remember his last name at all, though.
Started with a G, I think.
Guacamole.
I'll remember it like tonight.
It is night.
I mean, like,
Well, it's
tomorrow
morning,
night.
actually, kind of in a way.
Hey, people could be listening to this at any time.
Okay, I will remember this at an undisclosed point in the future.
Right. People could be listening to this 2 months from now.
It's okay. The point in the future is still undisclosed.
Did you watch any other streamers, Joshua?
Oh,
Whether it's iRacing or anything.
I've actually started, for a while I wasn't really watching any streams or anything. I started watching a lot of Matt Malone stuff, just having it on in the background at work. His streams are a nice balance between the super silly stuff and actually racing. He's kind of at that good middle point where people around him still make mistakes, but the racing's still good because they somewhat have talent. So it's not like when you get to an empty box level and people are just going, or you're at my level and it's like, I need to put 7 hours just to run one race. Trying to think of some other ones. I've been watching a little bit of Nicky Theme stuff.
He's something special. We haven't talked about him on the podcast yet.
He's never on the podcast.
I'm working on it. I basically consider him the Dr. Disrespect of iRacing.
I mean, I don't even know if you could consider him that because that's just his personality. That's who Nicky is.
Has Nicky cheated on his wife, though?
I don't know.
I mean,
also, Dr. Disrespect did not cheat on his wife. The man who plays the character cheated on his wife.
Are we gonna get into like an?
So did the man
argument?
who plays Nicky Team cheat on his wife?
Nicky Team doesn't play a man. Okay, so anyway, I think it's extremely impressive what Nicky can do, as he can do all that commentary and he can use a bullhorn and stuff like that, and he does all that when he's like nose to tail with another car in front of him. It really is amazing.
He's like really good at this.
Yeah,
like, he could probably win a world championship.
Yeah. It's almost like he's the world champion of endurance
racing. Get
racing.
him in a car at Le Mans.
I think he'd be pretty good.
Yeah.
You know what? Let me have. I know a guy over at Aston Martin. Let me go ahead and have him give him a call.
But to get a guy at that talent that's willing to stream, iRacing is great. It's exactly.
But why? You know, I'm gonna make that argument here, and say, I mean, he's a guy, normal age, middle age, younger age, whatever you want to call it, however you want to define it. I don't know how old he is. I'm just BSing my way through here. But, I mean, we're to the point in time where people...
I'll define it. He's 28.
Okay, he's 28. And you know what 28-year-olds do? They've played video games. So why is it strange or weird that, this guy is playing a video game? I mean... It's just weird because it's a profession.
It's a sim, not a video
nobody
game.
Said it was weird. I said it was great.
Well, yeah, but it's kind of like that thing that it's like, oh man, look at this. It's like,
I get what you're going for there. It's kind of like, why is this something exceptional when it's kind of something that happens all the time? It just happens to be exceptional because he's streaming it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I got.
And using a bullhorn and singing songs and making jokes and.
Have you seen millennials, Kevin? That's like what they all do.
And not own houses.
Thanks, parents' generation.
So he's 28. I'm just a little bit older, and by that I mean a little bit older. I won't disclose. And
I'm going to say 34.
I fit none of that.
34 is mine. 34.
That must be the cutoff right there between millennial and not millennial. But it's not.
Okay, here's the deciding factor.
You're too high, Randy.
Do you find Tide Pods interesting?
No, I do not find Tide Pods interesting.
Okay, so you're not a...
And this is not an interview segment of Empty Box. It's an interview segment of Josh Chen.
Yeah, but
that deflection.
No one cares about Josh, but...
Well, I mean someone cares. Someone clicked on the video knowing that is an interview of Josh Chen.
That's just one segment of an overarching show. I'm sure there's going to be an awesome bit thrown in there.
Video uploaded, fine.
So basically, we should just change the name of this podcast to "It Was Another Segment." It all just runs together, and every single time there's another segment, you have to get all of us back together, and we add another person into the room. I think that'd actually be
I'm saying the interview is going to be one segment of the overall podcast. All right, don't worry about it. I'm just kidding. Don't worry. Keep going. Pretend I'm not here.
Oh, we have been.
Wait, who are you?
It's my show, but pretend I'm not here.
Ladies and gentlemen, where the guests are told to pretend. God, Eric Andre should have taken this angle with his show, man.
Josh, for the YouTube video, we have your race up, but obviously it's muted. So do you do commentary when you on your videos?
I do, and that's actually one of the things that I've made a small investment on. For a while, I was using cheap gaming headsets, and 2 years ago now, I finally went out and actually bought a nice XLR mic and conversion box, and honestly, it's one of the better investments I've ever made. So, not even for the audio quality, but just the ease of use. I have knobs I can adjust volume from. I can adjust my headphones without having to rely on a dinky little switch. I've got an actual physical knob I can adjust. It's a nice quality of life thing, but when recording it honestly does help a lot. Okay, so do you feel like you have to constantly be talking because you're making a video? I used to think that, and then after watching some of Matt Malone's streams lately, words are hard. I don't feel that way anymore because I know that there's those periods where you're focused on driving, and I think that an audience can kind of expect that. See, but Matt has such an active chat room. I mean, I felt that way during my Thursday night iRacing NASCAR Series races because Empty Box and them guys were in the chat room and they were constantly going, so I knew people were entertained because they could see the chat on stream. But I mean, you don't have anything like that going, so yeah, it's also one of the differences between live streaming it and then doing commentary live and then recording after. It's different for that interaction because when you're recording, you're just kind of trying to explain it as you go, and you don't really have that back and forth with chat like you do with streaming, which is one of the things that I sometimes miss about trying to do streaming more. But it works out a lot easier as far as consistent uploading and actually maintaining a schedule when I am able to do it.
Do you use OBS, XSplit, something else?
OBS. Been OBS for 3-4 years now.
How come you don't use an overlay?
I don't think it's needed, honestly. There's nothing more than what's needed on the screen for me. There's nothing that really the viewer would need to know outside of what I'm seeing at that time.
High five through the internet for me.
Would you prefer to watch something without the overlay? I mean, because Matt has an overlay, but he keeps it simple.
I mean, I think it depends what you're doing. If you're recording and doing everything kind of uploaded after, then I don't think you need an overlay at all, because you have that ability to go back and see something and then fast forward back in the video and go, oh, okay, that makes sense. Whereas streaming, you have things like the chat interaction. It makes more sense when you're watching a VOD that you have the chat there recorded, because if it's on like YouTube, you can't see that chat recording like you can on Twitch.
I'm kind of obnoxious. I put all the lap times on the corner of the screen there, but I actually like that because I can go back and look at the race later, because I'll think I'm like the slowest car on the track, and I'll go back and watch the race with all the lap times, and I see like, oh, I know I'm running about the same times as everybody else. So it boosts my confidence a bit. Without an overlay, you really don't know how your lap times compare to the people you're chasing. Also, it doesn't really apply to YouTube, but if you're streaming on Twitch and people just tune in halfway through the race, they like instantly want to know how many laps are left, what spot you're in, et cetera, what the gap is. So the overlay helps there.
What I normally do is I'll just leave it on the F3 for most of the race, and I've got the laps up, what spot I'm in, who's around me, so it kind of.
But you can't see how much time is left. On your timed races, so.
Oh no, you can see for timed races.
No, not on the relative. You got to hit F1.
Yeah.
They should really fix that.
They should.
Yeah.
Fix a lot of things.
Opening up a can of worms there.
Yeah.
Okay, well then let's get into that. So what are some things you think that Iracing needs to improve of? Because part of the thing is we want this to grow. So.
Oh Lord.
Oh, that's a big can of worms.
Now let's not go into like sim.
Now will be very different than the answer you get after Josh wrecks out of a race.
Now I'm not looking for like technical sim physics thing. I'm just like quality of life things or things that would help you as a content creator. Those kind of things.
I think the camera system needs a rework.
But
really
right. Okay.
The depth of field doesn't. The calculation, something's wrong there. You see it a lot when you get fences. The fence will entirely blur, but then the wall below it doesn't, and something's off with how the depth of field gets calculated. And also the camera controls just need a rework in general. If we could have options like a crane cam, that would help immensely, because we have a crane cam modeled on the GRC tracks, and we can't replicate that like as a camera for like broadcasts and stuff without going through major hassles that honestly aren't worth it for a shot that you see like 2-3 times on broadcast.
Shout out to Esteban Ballo.
Yeah, like there's things you can do that kind of fake the effect, but that whole movement, you can't do that through iRacing. And I think being able to plot out cameras and have those keyframes would go a long way, but I don't see that happening in iRacing for a while right now.
No, it's definitely not on their list of priorities.
Honestly, I think it's a shame, because overall, I think iRacing is probably one of the better looking sims. The Assetto Corsa Competizione trailer looked nice, but as far as just overall graphics and everyday settings, iRacing honestly is the most natural and best looking for me.
Yeah, we'll see what happens that Assetto Corsa game gets to market. if it even does, given Kudo's track record.
Empty. What's your opinion on how iRacing looks compared to other sims?
I really like the way it looks. Much like what Josh said, it looks right. It doesn't look flashy. It doesn't have a lot of the effects. But in particular, the one thing that I really like, and comparing to other Sims, definitely, I always miss it, is just the crispness of the graphics. Because it makes it very easy to tell and easy to see things, whereas in some other certain titles, stuff in the distance just doesn't have the same level of sharpness and detail, and it just it sucks.
I always thought that I always kind of get jealous when I see other Sims in their graphics. But I know the game, the hardware underneath is probably not very good. But I kind of think iRacing's graphics are maybe a little dull. Like, I think the flashiness you were talking about with the other games is kind of what I look at.
See, I think there's a lot of small things that look good in other games when you go in replays and stuff like that, but then when you're actually driving, you don't see it, and it doesn't help at all. Like, some games, they'll model the grass blades, but outside of, like, some screenshots, it
Get
really
on it,
doesn't do
Kemmer.
anything. And
I mean,
actually... No, go ahead.
Those grass blades are so important to see when you go at 175 miles an hour.
Didn't you hear about the new grass model that's coming?
That actually relates to something else I was thinking about with iRacing, is a dedicated screenshot mode, kind of similar to what F1 2017 did, would actually help quite a bit, because
they have a screenshot button, but it doesn't. I don't like it.
It's nowhere near the same the exposure tools and stuff like that even a game like F1 2017 has now.
Yeah, it's really become something of a standard within like every racing game.
And from a content creator standpoint, it'd be so much easier to make thumbnails.
Yeah, because right now, having to go through, if you want to add motion blur, you're masking through Photoshop and taking hours doing it.
Or asking Jamie to do it.
Well, I do the same thing, but we're not going to talk about that.
I find it weird, though, they got that screenshot tool where you can take like a super mega high resolution screenshot, but yet like they haven't bothered to actually fix that as far as I know, because they broke it with the DirectX 11 build.
Oh yeah, because the shadows don't work with it, right?
Yeah, which is really lame, because it used to actually be really fun to toy around with, because you could do a lot of really cool stuff with such high resolution.
Yes, you could. Made it a lot easier for masking motion blur shots too.
Mm-hmm.
I miss that.
Back in my day, the iRacing screenshot tool actually worked.
That is kind of crazy to me.
Yeah, but you had to drift the modifieds.
I mean, I would take that.
You would take drifting the modifieds for a screenshot tool.
I mean, that's basically what I did in the IndyCar. But I did racing the IndyCar for like 3 years, so what's the difference?
Fair enough.
What's your biggest iRacing pet peeve?
People that are not decisive.
I hate it.
If you show that you're going to give me one line and you're going to move over,
yes,
I'm going to lose it at you.
I expected you to say Trost.
I normally drive the slower car, but I drive. I'm not a Neo, but I mean I drive the slower car. Sometimes you get these prototypes and they clearly have an inside path and they just back out, and you just totally like lost so much time because you're giving them the inside of the corner. They just back out. Oh.
There's people in Neo that are like that. Don't worry. Neo's got its own. There's some lemons in that series too.
Some.
Like, never mind.
Oh, I could name names, but I'm not going to do that because we still have another race to go.
I almost named the wrong name, like Jamie. But
I know exactly who you're going to say too.
Well, I've been watching Neo this year. You guys are having like no luck.
I don't know if I'd call it luck. It's more
no luck.
We put ourselves in some positions that weren't good. Sebring, we had Sebring's the only one that I can really say we had like absolute bad luck on, because we had a GT car swing across our nose and we got a penalty for it, even though they like I said earlier, they weren't decisive at all and just kind of meandered through Sunset Bend. And I looked outside and said, oh, they're going up there. I'm going to cut inside. And they swung across the track across my nose. And I was like, okay. And we got a stop and hold penalty and probably cost a 5th or 6th place with a really fast car. Next race was Road America, and we had a fast car, and Jack put it in the tires in turn 1. So that was
You
about...
each put it in the tires there like 3 times.
Well, I call that bad luck too. I mean,
I didn't put it in the turn 1 tires, but
Yeah, that's fair enough.
He
I
mean,
did it at
that's
the other end of the front.
but just even the last 2 rounds, you guys were in something early.
yeah. Honestly, the last 2 were things that I don't think we could have seen coming at all. We had contact with the team that didn't surprise me at all early on because they wanted to bulldoze through,
Right.
and only got a warning for it. So, I guess if someone swings across your nose, you're going to get a penalty. But if you barrel into someone, you won't get a penalty. I don't know. And then the last race was just I got ran over by a GTE car under braking when I was in a prototype. That's all I have to say.
Right, and you flipped over, right?
Jack, please.
No, I didn't flip.
That was the other car that flipped over?
Yeah, that was SRN.
Yeah.
I mean, we've been fast. Like, starting off, we were a little slow at Sebring, but after that, we've been top 5 pace every week. And I think the only one that I can really look at and say we really messed up was Motegi when I ran out of gas because I'm a moron. That's all I really have to say about that one. Yeah.
I assume you go back and watch the broadcast after it's done?
I'll flip through them every once in a while. I know if there's sections where we're featured on the broadcast, I'll go back and watch those sections. In SCO, the first race of the season was at Nürburgring, and we were running 2nd or 3rd on strategy at one point. And instead of mentioning, oh, this is a good start, good strategy call for them to try and jump someone, no, it was all about why wasn't Jack in the car? So they spent a whole 5-10 minutes talking about that. Meanwhile, I have the car in 2nd on fuel strategy. I'm like, what? And someone had mentioned something about it in our team chat, and I went back and watched it after the race, and I was like, wow, okay.
So what are some things from your observations watching the broadcast that you would prefer that they do differently?
I mean, I don't know if it's anything broadcasters can really change without making huge investments. Actually, Race Spot's done a little thing lately that's helped them a lot. They've done a stream that's almost real time through Mixer and their RTL protocol that basically they can let the commentators see what the main stream is showing for everyone, which I think is honestly a great move. It's more towards how actual broadcasts work. But overall, what broadcasts need, they need more computers, more views they can go to at one time without having to switch in sim and be able to go through and pull replays like a TV broadcast does, where there's 1 or 2 VTRs dedicated to pulling that up and can play it right there. You're not having to interrupt the sim and get the replay issues that have been happening lately, especially in team sessions.
Right.
Because broadcast TV is what I've been wanting to do, and I've studied at university, so that whole setup is kind of what I would dream for iRacing broadcast to be. I don't think it's ever going to get quite to that level without, a huge company coming on board, just because it'd be so much investment for that equipment. Because, if you're observing a CSGO tournament, you can do one computer and get 10 things, have a second one dedicated to replay. On iRacing, for a 20-car race, you would need probably at least 5 computers to really do that right and do it at a good broadcast level.
Mm-hmm. How do you feel about the overlays and how pretty much if you're trying to follow, let's just say a GT car, you could pretty much have to wait for it to scroll through. If by the time you finally see where the car is, it's been like 3-4 minutes. Yeah, have you noticed that?
Yeah, it's it's kind of hit or miss even on what race and what classes they have in it. Because sometimes if it's a 2-class race like Neo, you can go through pretty quick and find it in a minute or two. Or if it's SEO and it's 3 classes, it takes that 3-4 minutes to find it. And honestly, for stuff like that, when RaceSpot's running timing, I'll just go on the timing page and look for that instead of through the overlay, just because it's quicker. But I mean, that's an issue in regular race broadcasts too. I mean, watching WEC running that same issue a lot. Watching Blancpain races, it's impossible to figure out where anyone is because they don't even list team names; they just list the car. So it's a broadcasting issue in general that I don't think anyone's really found a good solution to. I think the best we've come was the first season of Neo when Glacier had 3 classes across the ticker at one time.
Right.
And even that was pretty janky as it was.
Well, I actually think that may be one of the better ways to do it because I watch. I'm a fan of you guys. Because we have the relationship. So in the past, so I've been. I like root for you guys. And then I like to watch like in the background at work and stuff. So like I'll be like it'll be on, but I'm not really paying attention. And then like I'll just like go and check out. Oh boy, I wonder where they're running, and then have to like sit there and wait. So kind of annoying. Obviously, if I was watching live, I would just go to the live scoring. But I almost never watch live.
Yeah, that is one of those things where I've done the same thing, watching old broadcasts and just trying to figure out where stuff's at. I'm like, I don't even know because I was trying to watch some of the old iRacing Indy 500s and just trying to figure out where I was at certain points in the race and whether it be cautions or just the ticker going away at certain times and not cycling all the way through. I'm like, I have no idea where I was running then.
All right, what's if somebody wanted to get into streaming, what would be some advice you would give them? Streaming or recording?
Just find something you really like to run and do that, and figure out what you want to do with your stream. If you want to show people something different that they haven't seen before and teach them something about it, or just kind of be that Nikki theme, completely off the walls, entertaining style, like. Figure out what works for you, what people want to see from you. Like, figure out your personality, basically.
Empty, same question.
Huh? What?
What would be your advice to somebody just starting out?
Do it for the fun. Simple as that. I
exactly.
mean,
well, exactly.
If you're fun, then what's the point of doing it?
Exactly.
If you're not...
Yeah, exactly. Even if you're a live streamer and you have 2 viewers, as long as you're having fun, that's the important part.
Exactly, because if you aren't having fun at 2 viewers, you ain't gonna have fun down the road.
You definitely aren't gonna have fun when the trolls come out and start calling your work number.
I can safely say I've never had that happen. I also don't have a work number for that to happen with.
Yeah, well, I'm not too hard to find online. So,
that's true.
RutgersKev and Associates.
I mean, boy, I wonder how hard it is to find me. I'm a lawyer in Monmouth County. My name's Kevin O'Keefe. I wonder how hard it would be.
I'm sure your name and number are on all the bus stop benches, right?
No, because I'm a defense attorney. But still, it's just that's all
your name and number are on all the bus stops.
Defense attorney, defense. But my boss on the plaintiffs, when I was a plaintiff's attorney, my boss had a giant billboard on Route 9, which is a main road, and it's his big bald head.
See, that reminds me of something, because actually my wife's father is a lawyer, and he said a statement one time that kind of struck with me. If you have to advertise as a lawyer, then you're not a good lawyer. And I'm like, huh. I feel like that actually would hold pretty true. And everything, kind of.
I'm just going to say that Josh just said your boss was not a good lawyer. I'm just going to throw that out.
My former boss, and I would agree.
Well, see?
Man, I just got lawyered by Josh Chin.
You do have to... I would say that it's not a hard and fast rule. There's some very good attorneys that are also what I would call plug whores. But... I mean, we have a guy in New Jersey. He's on the front page of the phone book, the back page of the phone book, the middle page of the phone book, the inside cover of the phone book.
Yeah, no,
He calls his law office he says it is like his name, and then it is the legal institution.
See, we just have Morgan and Morgan for the people, which is actually I've seen it used as a meme now, which I'm kind of proud of Central Florida. It's like, oh, we're branching out in the world. We're now a meme.
And Morgan is like the main people to advertise. I mean,
Yeah.
we have Jacoby and Myers. People in the area would definitely know them, but I wouldn't say the attorneys in Jacoby and Myers are bad. They're just a big law firm. I'm more talking to like the guy. This guy's name is Herb Ellis. I don't mind saying his name. This guy's name is Herb Ellis, and he's like a one-man crew. He's got like 2 other attorneys with him. So his only way to get clients is just advertise. So. Yeah, he would be what your father-in-law was talking about.
Also, funny enough, my father-in-law is a employment lawyer all by himself, and still doing pretty well at it. So,
All right, Josh. Well, it was nice having you on. Can you give us the plug again? Give us your social media as well.
let's see. Twitter is going to be King of Chins. I finally got my handle after like 4 years of trying. 4 years of trying, 4 years of frustration. Earnhardt meme.
I was about to make the same joke.
I made it before you could. Facebook, King of Chins on there as well. YouTube, you already know that. Instagram, actually, I post photos every once in a while because I like to go out to races. I'll be headed out to St. Pete soon, taking photos out there. King of Chins on Instagram. I got some stuff from the Rolex 24 that I'm pretty proud of, so go check that out.
And just so you know, my desktop background is actually one of your photos from Rolex a couple years ago, actually.
Was it really?
Yes.
Oh.
It was the one with
Very
the Corvette at night.
I know the one you're talking about, too. I'm going to find that in 1 second.
And that's the end of the interview. Donk.
And we're back. So, iRacing had a funny tweet just today. They said it's that time of the year again, and they had the scene from Seven. What's in the box? And they had, is that time of the year again? What's in the build? So we've had 2 preview videos released. One is Belle Isle, which is the Detroit Grand Prix. Only Indy cars and sports cars race there, right? And they only do it 1 weekend a year, right? As far as I know, Randy?
Yeah, it's 1 weekend a year. IndyCar, you get sports cars, it'll be Pirelli World Challenge. IMSA, I know, has been there in the past. I honestly don't know off the top of my head if they're racing there. You'll get like smaller Formula cars as well. I mean, it's sort of like your typical, insert street course Grand Prix where there'll be sort of the big kind of name stuff, but it's not uncommon to see Indy Lights or Star Mazdas or something share the weekend as well. So Belle Isle, it's it's become the traditional race after the Indy 500 for IndyCar.
Right, and it's really a IndyCar track. I mean, really, they're the only cars that have a marquee race there.
I think you're right. I don't know the history of the Belle Isle circuit as much as a lot of other people, but
IMSA's been there, but it's basically like a stop on the calendar.
Yeah, I mean it's sort of. Although to be fair, a lot of other tracks are kind of like that. I'd even argue Long Beach is like that for a lot of the sports car series. Now, granted, the Pirelli World Challenge puts on a good show at Long Beach. They do at Belle Isle as well. But you are right. The Long Beach is known for IndyCar. Belle Isle is known for IndyCar. It is an IndyCar track.
Long Beach has more prestige because of the money. You got a lot of sponsors in there. You got a lot of celebrities.
A lot
there.
of history too. I think it's the longest running IndyCar event outside of the 500.
Yeah. So I mean, so it's really cool that we're getting a track, and it's really cool that we're getting a street track. I just really don't want to see Belle Isle on the calendar for like every series, because it is a street track, and there's not going to be like a lot of passing and everything like that. I'd rather run on the more traditional tracks for, let's just say, the GT3 Sprint Series. So I actually don't even know if I'm going to buy this track.
I will 100% because I'm a big fan of the IndyCar. I'm running it in a couple leagues, and I know that they'll end up using it. It's Belle Isle's a good circuit. I think it's a little bit more racy than a lot of the street courses, but I definitely get what you mean. It's sort of like we kind of had this conversation when we talked about new tire model stuff in the past, and it's certainly an element. Is people always ask for things that make the sim harder. They ask for the tracks to be really slick on dirt. They ask for flat spotting. They ask for tires to blow out. They ask for all these things, and they get them. Because the idea is, and they ask for street courses. And the idea is like, oh well, I'm really good, and I can do. Me as a sim racer, I can run this very technically difficult and demanding element of racing. And there's everyone else who can't, and then you end up finding out it's a lot harder than you think it is, and you're not as good as you think you are. And it's like suddenly, oh, it needs to be easier. It needs to be easier. I know Dave Kemmer made a post about that, talking about rain and talking about tire flat spotting with NTM V7. I see the demand for all these street circuits much the same. I see a lot of people asking for things like Long Beach and Monaco. Let's be real, they're gonna come out. They'll be popular for the first build, and then they'll be ghost towns because no one can keep agreeing without stacking up the track in 90% of the official races. But it's still good to see, and it's good to get sort of the first kind of official street course because Montreal really isn't one. It is technically a pre-built racing circuit, although I think some of the roads are technically on public roads, and Long Beach is still in like infinite tech track state.
Okay, and the other thing that came out was the new GTE car that's been hinted at for a while.
Porsche,
but it might have been out a little early. Interestingly.
Yeah, and I've actually got confirmation that for Drew, for the media. I know a lot of people, there's a thread on the forums, or people discussing on the forums I saw today, who were like, "Oh, iRacing's rushing to get some of this stuff out. They're trying to get some of these big things going out this week." That video is not supposed to go up. Drew actually he got trolled a little bit when he uploaded the video. He uploaded it unlisted, but he uploaded it to a public playlist. And YouTube kind of gave him the finger and made the video viewable publicly. Luckily, by the sounds of it, there was no issues in terms of like having to get an okay from Porsche or anything. So there's no problems there with them having issue with the video going up early. But it was still a little bit funny to know that Drew was there squirming a little bit because they don't try to stack the announcements the way they do or the way they kind of used to. They try to spread them out. So it'll be like, if you notice, Belle Isle came out last week, came out on Tuesday, week 11. I imagine that Porsche video was probably supposed to drop on Monday or Tuesday of week 12, and then you'd have your build. I think that was sort of the intent, but we'll have to see if there's anything else in the build. Maybe they'll have something else that Drew will have to make a video as punishment for leaking this one to play for on Monday.
Well, there's got to be something else. Or if there isn't something else, boy, you'll have a little angry membership.
I have a suspicion that there's more coming in this build that we've yet to see.
Yeah, there has to be. But we'll find out.
I think the big thing to talk about this new build, though, is, barring any new content we don't yet know about, is the new tire model stuff. NTM7, Dave Kemmer kind of said that this build would sort of be the first kind of mark with some of the cars getting the new tire model, right?
Well, that's what I mean. That's what I was kind of getting at.
It's sort of what cars
coming.
Are we going to get?
Yeah, exactly. What cars are we going to get? Exactly.
And what cars would you really like to see? I know you being an NASCAR guy, I'm sure you want to see if the super hyper camber hacks go away.
I know, but as a fixed setup guy, to me, what does it matter? It's one of those, I'll wait and see. Obviously, everything is going to be an improvement, but honestly, when I went to VR, everything has changed for me on the roadside. I was totally out of control on the roadside. My corner entry speed was way too fast for like every single corner on the track. Right. So I'm finally just now starting to come to grips on the roadside. I've really improved there. And on the NASCAR side, I run fixed setups, and the fixed setups are terrible. So I can't blame the tire model for that. So I'm not sure if it's going to improve the racing. I'm kind of like on a wait and see basis. I will say that I happen to another sim like a Assetto Corsa or something like that, and I have a lot of trouble driving it. I don't know. So, well, I'm holding my breath.
Yeah, it'll be good to see. I really hope that it ends up being good. But I don't know. It's new tire model is going to be interesting. I know that some people want it on the roadside as well because you have sort of the tire pressure weirdness that happens where you're running really, really low tire pressures. And let's hope that we get a number of cars. Certainly the big cars. I would imagine that if it's coming for this first release, GTE cars will have it because that is something iRacing tends to do. They like to have if they're releasing a new car alongside a tire model, that car typically has it. And that would dictate that the Ferrari and the Ford GTE cars would need to get it. I would imagine GT3 cars might get it. That's sort of a toss-up. And I would also imagine that the NASCAR cars, specifically the A car, with the Peak Antifreeze series, would also get it as well. So, but we're gonna have to wait and see.
Yeah, and it may just be, hey, it's not ready yet, which would be a disaster in terms of PR. But hey, if it's not ready yet, then it's not ready yet. So again, we'll wait and see. We'll have a build preview in 2 weeks when everything is announced. When it's week 13, we get a chance to actually drive it. It's going to be a little hard to explain a new tire model if there's not anything to really show. If there's blowouts, we could definitely show that.
The blowouts already exist. Blowouts are already a thing.
Yeah, but do they?
I actually we did a race on RaceSpot the other day. eSpeed Contender Series. You can find it on the iRacing YouTube channel. eSpeed Contender Series at Dover. It was a truck race. They had an 80-lap green flag run to the end, and in the last 10 laps, we had 6 cars. Well, we had 6 trucks, blow tires going into 1 or going into 3.
Well, that's what you need. You need 70 laps on the tires. I've actually blown a tire.
Yeah, it was weird because
in 10 years.
Right. I had never seen it happen in a race before. I knew that you could do it. I'd seen people do it in practice. I've never actually done it. But the very first truck that blew a tire did it. And Justin was like, he just blew a tire. And at RaceBot, we don't like overemphasizing or emulating the realness. So if someone has a hardware failure, we generally like to say it. And I was producing that race. I wasn't commentating. I was just doing the stream. And when I first heard that, I was like, Justin, don't lie to everyone. He didn't blow a tire. And I did a replay, and I did on board, and I watched it, and I was like, oh my god, he blew a tire. And then it happened to another guy, and then another guy, and it was super interesting, super fun to watch. It wasn't the greatest because it's obvious that they just sort of hit a hard wall where all the tires just failed, which doesn't quite happen in real life. Well, it does happen in real life when teams this is both oval and road course racing when they sort of exceed what the tire is supposed to do. So that caused problems in the Daytona 24 earlier this year in real life. But it's one of those things that I know people really, really want on the road course side, especially for sports car and endurance racing. Having that extra element where people have to take care of the tires as opposed to do what they basically have now, which is while they take new tires every single stop, it's you don't get punished for like going off track or flat spotting or anything like that. But still, I'm really interested to see what this new tire model holds.
Yeah, and if you get it punished for going off track, that's going to help me because I'm one of those I don't push it drivers.
Yep, you're not one of those. You definitely like to just kind of chill and cruise around because you know that your pace isn't up there, but it'll be interesting to see what happens and how, especially if those elements are in. I honestly 100% doubt that those elements will be in the initial release of this new tire model. I'm hoping it happens soon because it's part of what we kind of really need for the endurance races to kind of take that next step forward. But it'll dictate, and you'll see some teams. I think some people struggle with it, and some people do quite well with it. And of course, all the ins and outs of a new tire model of what's the optimal pressure, what's the optimal temps, what's the optimal alignment settings, blah 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 blah, endless and endless.
Yeah, no matter what box you put people in, they're going to find a pair of scissors. So even though the new tire model is going to be there, you're still going to have something funky happening with the setup. Sure.
Oh yeah, it'll always be that way. There's never been a sim ever that's hasn't had semi-funky kind of setup stuff, and it's just the way it goes.
Okay, well, that's our show this week. Thanks, Randy, for being on. Stay tuned for next week. We're going to have pretty much a whole episode of World Championship Hot Takes. There's a lot to talk about. There's a lot happening in terms of esports. Just to give you a little preview, we've got drama on the track for the World Championship Series. An awesome points battle happening in that, by the way. A lot of drama. We had the VRS 6 hours. We can talk about that. And we've had pretty much two really bad events with the Peak Series at Charlotte and the midgets. No, what series
Sprint
was it?
World of Outlaws Craftsman Sprint Car Championship Series.
There you go. So yeah, so we got a lot to talk about. Got a lot of interesting points of view. Randy is involved in that as well because he's the commentator for most of these. So if you have any thoughts on any of the World Championship events, anything you've seen, or just the quality of racing, because I know there's an issue here on the dirt that they're putting the drivers in a really bad box because of what the conditions of the tracks are. So if you have any thoughts, feel free to call the show. All the information is on the screen. This is the week to call the show if you have any kind of frustrations over anything involving the physics in general, or anything, the box that iRacing is putting these drivers in, which requires them to make the moves that they're doing, which we will talk about next week. So thanks, Randy, for being on the show. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Can I just throw out there to, if you listen on iTunes, can you leave a review, please? I have one review on iTunes, and I know there's people out there that listen. So the more reviews I have, the more I'll show up in the search engines. Okay, so I don't normally do the whole like, comment, and subscribe thing, but give me a review on iTunes.
You don't have to like or subscribe, but comment.
No, please, no. I don't need those either. We'll certainly get a lot of dislikes. I don't have to ask for those.
Yep, definitely.
All right, Randy, have any final thoughts?
World Championships have been interesting. Congrats to Pure for winning at the Nürburgring. Congrats to Josh for winning the 500. Congrats to Howard Weaver for having a really good couple runs in the sprint cars when he's pretty much a late model specialist. Congrats to Tim Ryan for back-to-back poles in the sprint cars. Congrats to the NASCAR Peak Antifreeze Series for bringing some fireworks, and to Nick Shelton getting his first win.
And congrats to iRacing for having a special event go off perfectly.
Without a hitch. Yeah, that huge props to that.
Yep. All right, thanks everybody for watching. Bye.
That's the end of my show. Donk.